In the recent installment of One Piece, we see Zoro confronted with a monster. It is said there's something special about his presence. And of course, Venus looks before Zoro is thrown at him. And the two sword style clash of Zoro with the one sword style of Venus Juro, who then, of course, we all notice there's a Keitetsu blade. Well, Zoro notices. And after this clash, Zoro even says, launch the ship already. Zoro looked like he was worried. Like, I never seen Zoro actually do that, what he said there. Like, he was worried. Well, I've seen it before, but like, still, it's still shocking when you do see it. As Jinbei catches him, that's how much of the knockback it was from this clash. So this is not a scrub. This is confirmation. Like, we didn't get already confirmation of Venus Juro being badass. Like, when he's going against these pacifistas and freezing them with, of course, his crazy mythical zone Delver ability and his swordsmanship skill. Or like when you have Sanji, Giants, Bonnie, and they're like so many people going at this guy, like this cutting in half, of course, Punk Records. Like, this guy is amazing. He's incredibly powerful. I'm giving all the respect to Venus Juro. But this opponent is a major part of Zoro's storyline, and Zoro has a great track record from, of course, Arlong seeing his wounds and being so shocked, to, of course, him, the sacrifice, taking Luffy's pain, going up against Kuma first, and then taking Luffy's pain when he knows he couldn't beat Kuma because he was just gonna fight. And of course, him also almost taking out a Celestial Dragon, and Mad Monk Rouge thought he was the captain. That's how badass he was. Like, just him being a vice captain was so shocking. I'm telling you guys right now, or even him throwing his pride away, of course, and bowing down to Mihawk, yo. Like, I'll tell you guys right now, Zoro doing that, like, for Luffy, I'm telling you guys, that was crazy. Now, I do want to say this. We don't need a second flashback like we got for Luffy, like we got for Sanji. Because Zoro, he is so dynamic through the One Piece story. I don't think we need a second flashback. I think today is a time to do a deep dive on Zoro and how this is really bad. I'm worried for Zoro because of his opponent. And we've seen some epic opponents from Zoro. So I want to talk about early on during the East Blue when Mihawk tells Zoro, if you're a confident swordsman, we don't need to cross blades for you to know I surpass you in your small skill. And we even see the moment of, like, he asks Zoro, is it courage? Or this courage, like, does it come from your confidence or is your ignorance? And Zoro replies, it comes from my confidence and my ambition. And this is a theme to understand Zoro's journey when it comes to how childish that ambition is and why it's a good thing. Of course, later on we see Zoro be humbled by Mihawk just using a toy. This is a very bad for someone like Sis Ego, like getting destroyed by that little thing. Yeah, like, you have to understand, like, this is why I really respect Zoro, because he has been humble. People are like, yo, Oda does like to humble Zoro. We've seen it early in the story. Oda will humble Zoro. And when Mihawk stabs him, Zoro says that he can't retreat because his ambition and everything he cares for will be shattered. Like I told you guys, he's very childish with ambition and everything. And that's a good trait for me. Like, that's a good thing. Like, Zoro is not going to stand back. He's going to keep going forward. Now, of course, the duel ends with Mihawk respecting Zoro and taking out his black blade and destroying his swords. Now, this is something that you should always keep in mind when it comes to how Mihawk was one of the first people to actually destroy Zoro, because Zoro has had his swords destroyed in the story. Now, in my opinion, the next time we see Zoro actually clash with a top tier in the One Piece story since Mihawk is, of course, his clash with Admiral Fujitora. And I'm not going to count Admiral Aokiji because that was Luffy's, that wasn't Zoro's opponent. And I'll tell you guys right now, we saw the clash, of course, Zoro returns with a flying sword slash after Fujitora sent him down with the gravity. So Zoro did decent against Fujitora in this clash, and I thought it was really cool that Oda had him up against an admiral so early on post-timeskip. And of course, we have to talk about after he defeats Pika, let's not underestimate Pika. His hand was the size of a town, and he had full body armor and haki just like Virgo. Zoro defeats him with his greater haki, and he checks his sword for damage after, as Mihawk taught him with haki and explained it's shame for a swordsman to, of course, have any damage on their sword. So, like I told you, to keep that in mind of Zoro getting his sword broken, yeah, Mihawk tells him that ain't good. Fast forward to the next time we see Zoro against top tiers. Yeah, that's on the rooftop in the Onigashima raid. And when Big Mom tells Kaido to look out when Zoro has that flying dragon attack that took off half of the skull, like the horns of the skull on Onigashima, that huge skull. I'll tell you guys right now, Big Mom rarely does that. So it was out of character for it to do that. So that's when I knew, okay, Zoro is up to no good right now. And right after we see Big Mom say, we underestimated them. That's insane, yo. After seeing this from Zoro, Big Mom finally admits, we underestimated them. These guys are actually legit. Zoro did that. And when Zoro actually cuts down the Yonko Kaido, this is not a regular top tier. Like if Zoro cut Fujitora, Kizaru, Big Mom even, like Big Mom's one of the more durable top tier. She's not normal in my opinion, but still. But the most durable top tier in Kaido, Zoro cut his scales. And Big Mom noticed like, wow, okay, he actually did it. He actually cut Kaido. That was a big deal. And when, of course, they do their team up attack, two Yonkos teaming up with a combo attack is still insane that we got that in Wano. Wano really was an amazing arc. Big Mom says, how many of the 5 will survive this? Big Mom even knows that her and Kaido going together with an attack, like these guys, the young worst generation shouldn't survive this. And Luffy uses Fujita himself and says something big is coming. So there was a lot of warnings for this craziness. Of course, Zoro steps in and blocks it. Now, I'm telling you guys right now, Zoro doing this, like, imagine there's three captains that are worth 3 billion berries after this arc. They didn't step in. It was Zoro. Zoro's the one who stepped in. It is something you have to admit. Zoro got balls of steel for this. And Big Mom is impressed, yo. She's impressed that they all survived, and that's because of the help of Zoro and then Law, of course, for helping with this Delphoid ability. And Kid even says it too, like, it's a feat. Kid admits it's a feat for blocking, even if it's just for a second. Like, it's kind of like a backhanded compliment, but I get what Kid's saying. Like, yeah, Zoro didn't fully block it, but still, just a second of stopping it. Even Kid has to admit, yo, that is a feat. Like, you can't, like, scoff at that. And then later on, we even see Law is shocked that Zoro is still fighting when every bone in his body should be shattered. This is why Zoro has such a toxic fan base, because he has moments like this, yo. Toxic fans mean that you're doing something good. Like, I mean, it means that you are really getting fans to lose their mind, be brainless because of how good you are. And that's how good Zoro is. Even though throughout my YouTube career, since 2015, 2016, I've always made jokes about Zoro tards. I have to admit, it's because Zoro's so goated, yo. That's the reason why he has those Zoro tards. For goodness sake, if anybody was there back in the days, yo, people had Zoro taking down Kaido. That was a theory, yo. That was actually, even popular YouTubers were making that theory, is Zoro's taking down Kaido. Like, that's showing you how people view their perception of Zoro. They, even though he's a vice captain, they still view him as the guy. And I thought it was cool when Zoro told Law that this is going to be the limit of his ability. And he's telling Law this because he's going up against a Yonko, the strongest creature alive, Kaido. Like, Zoro pretty much knows, I have to go all out. I have to do this for me to even do something to Kaido. And that's when Zoro brings out Asura. Since we haven't seen that since Eni's lobby against Kaku, Zoro brings out Asura finally in the post-timeskip, and Zoro cuts Kaido up with this attack. And it was pretty cool to see. Kaido even says, Zoro, you have Conqueror's Haki. Like, that is crazy. Kaido was the one to confirm that Zoro has Conqueror's Haki. And he says there's definitely going to be a scar after this that's going to stay with me. Even though Zoro was disappointed that Kaido didn't fall to the ground, Zoro, like, knows at this moment when he does do this attack and scars at Yonko, he's not Mihawk level and he still has a lot to improve. Now, I do want to say this, Kaido's in his hybrid form. It's really hard to knock down Kaido in his hybrid form. Like, we've seen Luffy do when he had Conqueror's Haki coding, but I'm telling you guys right now, it's not an easy feat to do that to Kaido in his hybrid form. That's his strongest form. So, Zoro with the scar was cool, but yeah, don't go too hard on Zoro for not being able to knock down Kaido. And I feel like Zoro now, King of Hell mode, definitely could knock down Kaido. And that's why we got the Zoro fight against King. Zoro wasn't at the level to even do anything to these Yonkos. Yes, he can do something to these Yonkos, but Zoro wasn't at the top tier level or even close to it. And that's why Oda gave him the King fight. To pretty much Zoro even admitted in the fight, saying, I wasn't even measuring up to Enma's standards. And his strongest moves weren't even affecting King, not even Yonko, a vice captain to a Yonko. And Enma was acting up, and like Zoro even says, yo, Odin can wield you with this much haki coming out. And that's when Zoro realized, oh, no, that's the thing. Like, Zoro says all that haki could kill him, but then realized that's how it's meant to be, aka Conqueror's Haki coding. And this is where Zoro became a guy. King even says to him, you got kingly ambition, a word used by Zoro in the East Blue as he mentions his promise to Luffy and Kuwena. Like, I'm telling you guys right now, King saying he has ambition, Zoro's ambition is so childish. I'm not surprised that his Conqueror's Haki even it gets revealed very childishly against Kaido. Now, of course, Zoro does defeat King, his strongest opponent yet that he's defeated, with the King of Hell mode, 3 Dragon style, 103 senses, Soul Ring Jikoku Dragon, epic name for an attack. Zoro cuts through his magma, which is cool, because of course Kinemon's technique that he taught him. Zoro also cuts through his sword, which was also cool. And then Zoro also cuts through his wing, who we saw his wing was blocking some epic attacks from Zoro. So to see his wing get cut off too was insane. Oh, Zoro really went to the next level by defeating King. Like, he kind of reminds me when he defeated Mr. One and he cut steel. It's like he went to the next level like that. I love those moments. And Zoro says he will become the King of the Hell, aka a top tier in the One Piece verse. He's not doing that for himself. That's the crazy part. He's doing it for Luffy. Like, have you noticed that his ambition, he has his ambitions, but his ambitions also, he throws it away for one guy only, and that's Luffy. I'm not saying he's throwing it away here, but I'm just saying, like, you understand why Luffy is so important to Zoro and his power. Like, Luffy is more important to Zoro than Zoro is important to Luffy, and I'll explain that maybe in another video. But for everyone who gets it, they get it. Now later on, of course, in the Egghead Island arc, we see CP0's strongest agent, who's an awakened Dofo user who just fought a Yonko and Gearfifth Luffy, is Zoro's opponent. So it's definitely not someone you can scoff at. Luffy even offers his vice captain help, and Zoro says, go fight Kizaru, get back to that admiral, I'll deal with the strongest CP0 agent. And he goes straight into his Kangasaki coating on his swords, not his bandana on, but still, Zoro is taking Lucci relatively serious. And don't forget, Lucci said, me and Kizaru here, that's all we need. You guys are all gonna be dead. And Kizaru did say Lucci is a GOAT agent, so these two on Egghead Island were actual threats. Now, of course, Zoro says not enough to fight my Yonko captain to Lucci, and Lucci says, oh, it's all good, yo. Taking a 2 of a Yonko is more than worth killing on his own. So this is the first time we're starting to realize, yo, Zoro is not just the vice captain to Luffy. He's a Yonko vice captain. So he has some respect in the One Piece world. Look at Katakuri. Look at King. Look at Marco. Like, look at these characters. They all have respect in the New World, in the One Piece world. They can be captains on their own right. Like, if I'm being honest, yo, when these worst generations came into the New World, Marco, Katakuri, King, these 3 guys could have easily taken out 90% of the worst generation as soon as they got into the New World. I'm just telling you how strong these vice captain Yonkos are. So it's pretty cool seeing Zoro get that respect here, and Zoro's now respected in the One Piece verse. I love it. Now, of course, Lucci mentions all this hockey on the island when the Gorosei arrive, and Zoro says it's all over the island. And as Sanji roasts Zoro for still fighting Lucci, like, and that is something that you have to understand. Lucci admits there's some crazy monsters here. Zoro even senses they're all over the island, and Sanji says, you're still fighting Lucci? Like, and I'm thinking, yeah, there's some monsters here, yo. Lucci's a monster, but now there's guys that are even above Lucci. Get the job done. And this leads to him dodging some of Lucci's epic pistols, finger pistols, and attacking Lucci with a devastating attack. This attack left a serious mark on Lucci, and Zoro, motivated by Sanji, finally takes down this monster. And I love how Jinbei comes there and says, yeah, the fight is over, but Zoro says Lucci's still standing, which was crazy. Like, Zoro, you just gave this guy 1 HP and you wanted to be at 0. It's funny how Zoro moves, yo. Zoro always has to finish the job, and I thought that was cool. Now, of course, to give respect to Lucci, he did, let's be honest here, it did officially become a 2v1 once Jinbei entered and did his attack to Lucci. Even though Lucci blocked it, he got sent flying, but he still wasn't knocked out from Jinbei's attack, showing the respect for Zoro's opponent, yo. Zoro's opponent was no scrub. He still was standing. He still was standing after Zoro's attack, and then he still was standing after Jinbei's attack. So, yeah, he's at 1 HP, probably 0.5 HP, but still, I gotta give respect to Lucci. He was definitely a respectable opponent for Zoro. It's just that Zoro was above Lucci. Like, no marks on Zoro. Lucci looking like that. Like, we know who won the fight. So the reason why I gave like a quick synopsis on Zoro epic opponents, like I mentioned Fujitora and Admiral. I mentioned the Yonkos and Kaido and Big Mom respecting it. And now I even mentioned his fights through King and Lucci, 2 very respected characters in the New World. There's some top tiers in the New World. Not super top tier, but they're respected, yo. The reason why I did this is because you have to understand this, guys. It's the final saga. Luffy is fighting admirals and winning. That is insane. Luffy is coming off defeating the strongest creature alive, and he's having more trouble with a Gorosei than we've seen him have with Kaido and Kizaru. I know people don't want to say it, but let's admit it, yo. What we're seeing, I have a whole nother video on that. So to see Zoro now run into one of these legendary swordsmen who's a part of the Gorosei with possible origins to Wano and Ryuma, and of course even a legendary swordsman during the voice engine that we don't even know the name of, let's be honest here, we don't have to rely on Shuri the Rain, who I must admit, Oda is trying with this character, making him better with an invisible Delphi ability from Absolom, and taking a guard fist to the face and still be able to stand after. Like, Oda's trying to make Shuri the Rain look cool. Like, let's be honest here, that sword attack he did on Garp was a big, like, to his Garp's HP, that affected Garp's HP. Yes, it was a sneak attack, but it affected it. Not really a sneak attack, but he was taking out Kobe and Garp stowed in. Now, I do want to say this. The other opponent that we've been talking about for years is Mihawk, who we know once he trained Zoro, the tension was off. Like, people don't want to admit it, but let's just admit it right now, guys. The fight wasn't as hype once Mihawk trained Zoro. It's still hype, but not as hype. And that's why I came here to say, I just want Zoro to become the greatest swordsman and do it while having his greatest fight. And now it's time. Like, Oda's doing it. That's why Oda had him not looking that good against Venus Juro during this exchange. It's building up for him and Venus Juro to have a crazy epic fight, and I think this fight will be better than Shuri the Rain and Mihawk, if those fights even happen, guys. Shuri the Rain probably is going to happen because the Blackbeard pirates were going up against them, and Mihawk is probably going to happen because, of course, Zoro has to beat the world's greatest swordsman to become the world's greatest swordsman, which Mihawk versus Zoro could be better than Venus Juro, but Venus Juro, it's different because the world is at risk here. The world's not at risk against Shuri the Rain. The world's not at risk with Draco Mihawk. It's at risk against Venus Juro, and that's why I'm excited, guys. And that's why I made this video. This last chapter motivated this video, guys. It's really bad right now for Zoro. I'm telling you guys right now, Zoro better take this guy serious because he's a monster. And probably not right now on Egghead Island, but at the end, the final arc, we're gonna see this fight.